I left the firehouse and I started that business here in Phoenix. When you have rapport, there's subconscious cues that are going to tell you that you have rapport. Having a good context of how people process information is going to help you out a lot. Is what you're doing putting a smile on your face? Are you feeling joyful? I'm feeling joyful.
Welcome back to another episode of the Austin Zaback Show. Today we have Rafael Cortez on the show, and Rafael is a guy who's been in real estate since 2009. He's done over 1,200 real estate deals in his career. He's worked for guys like Sean Terry, Flip to Freedom, if you haven't heard of him. Massive guys in the space. Really well-connected guy. And I was actually just recently on Rafael's podcast, CEO Pulse. Correct me if I'm wrong. Is that the name?
Yeah, correct.
Okay. CEO Pulse, phenomenal podcast, dope set. And dude, you're absolutely killing the game, and I appreciate you being on the show today, man.
Thanks, man.
Yeah.
It's great to be here. I appreciate it. Appreciate the invite. Glad to have you.
Dude, you put out our episode, and I was like, man, that looks good. You know, I like your set.
It's cool to be on the other side of the mic.
You gotta love it, dude.
Yeah.
You're a good interviewer too. Yeah.
No, I think it was a great conversation, man. Thanks for doing that.
It was good, dude. Well, I of course, and I
Had a lot of
appreciate
fun.
you being here.
Yeah.
I'm ready to have a good conversation again.
Let's do it.
Yeah, I love it, dude. So there's a lot of things that I feel like I didn't even know about you, you know, and I've known you for a long time. It's funny for people watching, you know, I actually knew you as like the systems guy.
Yeah.
Right. So like I remember
The Podio guy.
The Podio guy, right?
Yeah.
I remember if you're watching and you don't know what Podio is, it's like the number one CRM that people use when you wholesale real estate. And dude, I think I remember being at I think it was Jesse Burrell's and Brent Daniels. Did they used to share an office?
Yeah, at one point we were, so Batch bought a building and Brent and I moved in there. So we were just kind of, renting, I had a small office. Brent had another section of the building, and then Batch had the entire building. So it was pretty cool having just, everybody in the same space.
Which is super cool. And I think that's how we initially met, if I remember correctly. I think one of those dudes, somewhere along the way, we were looking for like a Podio build out back in the day.
Yeah.
And they were like, oh, Rafael's the guy, and dude, you crushed it, bro. We used your Podio application and build out longer than we've ever used like any system in our life, Yeah. And we did a lot of deals out of that Podio, let me tell you. I'll bet you we did 1,000 deals out of that one Podio build out. 1,000 wholesale deals.
The funny thing is that, my intention wasn't really to put it out there for sale or anything. I just built it. I started, messing around with some of the code on the back end and whatnot. And I built it for my business, right? And then Brent sees it. He goes, bro, I want it. I was like, all right, cool. So now I had to duplicate the thing. I duplicated the thing. It was like, bro, you got to sell this thing. And then he started talking about it. He started sending people over for a Podio build out. Next thing you know, I'm the Podio guy.
You're the Podio guy.
Yeah, I'm the Podio guy. I was like, all right, cool.
You're
whatever.
pretty good at it, dude. You're pretty good at it. You're a systems guy. So I'm not, dude. I'm the polar opposite, just to be clear.
Yeah.
I'm the whatever the opposite of that is, that's me. I'm not that guy. I can use it at a really high level, but in terms of building it, I'm sure I could if I really put my mind to it. But man, it's just not my cup of tea,
Yeah,
so.
I don't know. Some people like video games. I like, weird stuff like that.
Dude, hey, I love it. There's a lot of money in that.
Yeah.
Right? Like for real. And no, dude, that's so cool, man. And it's crazy. It's such a small world, and just, how we met and all the things that we've done, together over the years is really cool. So I'm excited to share with the audience, anybody watching and listening. Obviously, my goal for them, Rafael, is just to get value.
Yeah.
Similar to what we did on your show the other day, just trying to provide value to people, trying to change people's lives. I believe, somebody watching or listening right now, they're trying to do their first wholesale deal, or they want to be an entrepreneur, they want to get into education. I don't know, but we're going to talk about something today that will change somebody's life. I believe that.
100%, man.
Yeah.
Put me on the spot. I have, I'll share everything. I think it's one of my, I don't know if it's a weakness really, but it's like, I can't keep anything to myself.
Hey, it's a strength. I think it's a strength. The vulnerability, bro. We had Cody Sperber on the show recently, and he opened up on the podcast. Really cool to see. And have you listened to that one yet?
No, I haven't listened to that. I just saw it. I saw it come up not too long ago, a couple of days ago, right? Yeah,
good, phenomenal episode.
Yeah.
He opened up in a way that I haven't ever seen him open up before on a podcast. So super cool, So I love being vulnerable, bro.
Yeah.
But before we kind of jump into everything and everything we're going to talk about, talk to me about, for somebody watching or listening, like, how did you end up in real estate? Like in 2009, what were you doing prior to real estate? How'd you end up there?
I come from the fire department background. I used to be a firefighter. I became a firefighter when I was 19, or at 19, and then I started working in Yuma, Arizona, right? So I did that for a few years. In the interim, my captain and I, or one of the captains, he wasn't my direct captain, but one of the captains and I were having a couple beers and talking about how much time we have, like in between shifts, right?
Yeah.
Like you have 24 on, 24 off. Like we should be building a business or, something along the lines of that. So the conversation goes on. He decides he wants to build out a funeral home. And then he goes, another good idea would be a non-emergency medical transportation business, just a really long title for an ambulance business, right? So wheelchair and stretcher patient transport. Fast forward maybe 3 years or something, and then he's got his funeral home in Yuma, and I left the firehouse and I started that business here in Phoenix. So it kind of, it really branched out, from a beer. Yeah. It's kind of like the moral of that story, but I had that for I bootstrapped the whole thing. I had that for several years, and around 2009, I was able to put together some cash, and I wanted to invest, right? I wanted to come in and do something. And during my high school and college years, I was working construction. I would go out and then do masonry work, and I would do framing on houses and roofs and all kinds of stuff. As a laborer, so it was like I knew how to swing a hammer. Like, all right, cool, I'll do that. Let's flip a house. So I went out and bought a house cash. I didn't leverage anything, which was mistake number one. I didn't know what I was doing, bro. Like I saw a beat up house and I was like, I can fix that. I can make it look pretty. And then, I did eventually. It took me like 6 months.
Oh my gosh.
And an over budget of like, I don't know, $60,000 and a $90,000 home. But I kind of, I broke off even. I think I made maybe a couple $1,000 on that flip, like just under 2,000, like net profit. Mm-hmm. So like, this is crazy, man. Real estate is insane. Like, how can people live off of this thing? Yeah. I was just doing everything wrong, man. It's like, so the story goes on. I jumped in another flip, and then I think up until my third deal is when I actually started paying attention to the settlement statements and everything that I was paying, right? And I saw assignment fee of $18K. Like the first assignment fee that I noticed that I paid was $18,000 to this one other dude. I was like, wait, what is that thing? So I called him up. He's like, well, that's what you paid me for the house. Like, bro, but I made like 6,000, 7,000. Like I wasn't making a lot of money on the first flips. And he was like, yeah, but that's the assignment fee. I was like, all right, cool. How do I do that? So he just kind of pointed me out in the right direction, a couple of podcasts, and I came across Todd Toback's podcast, which that was the very first one I listened to. And then in that podcast, I listened to Sean Terry. So podcasts, man, it's really a life shaper.
And there weren't a million podcasts back then, right?
No. This is maybe 2012, I think, at this point. So I started doing some real estate and messing around with things here and there, but not super heavy. I still had the other business. So I decided to sell the business, and and I'm kind of sitting there. I was like, all right, cool. I already started dabbling in real estate. I'm gonna go all in, right? So I go heavier into the wholesaling. I listened to Sean Terry, his stuff, and I closed a couple of deals. I think closed 4 wholesale deals, and then he sends out an email looking for an acquisitions guy. So I hadn't worked for anybody in the past decade, right? Like I had my own business. I had close to 50 employees altogether between everything, and so I was kind of used to doing my own thing. But I'm sitting there, I was like, all right, this is a whole new beast. If I'm gonna go work anywhere for anybody, like it's got to be somebody who challenges me, right? And like sure enough, man, I go in, I sit down with the guy. He goes, come join the team. And my idea, and I think I told him. No, I don't. I know I told him. My intention was to spend at least a year with him, right? I was like, I'll give you a year guaranteed, because he asked me, like, I don't want somebody to leave after 6 months. I was like, no, I can guarantee you a year. Yeah. I'll stay here for at least a year. And I stayed for 3 years just because I like the environment was one thing. I was at the funnel end of a ton of marketing dollars. So I was like the acquisition guy running around, everywhere in town, and my card was all over the place. So I got exposed to so many seller conversations. And at that time, this other really cool thing was happening. I went back to school in 2009. So I got my bachelor's in business administration and in servant leadership, and then I jumped right into a master's degree in psychology. So I got that, and then I got a second master's degree in organizational psychology. So I'm going through this whole entire process of learning how people think.
Hey, real quick, I just want you to do me a huge favor. If you're enjoying the show and you're enjoying all the amazing guests that we've been having on lately, then do me a massive favor and smash the like button, drop a comment down below, and subscribe if you have not already. I would greatly appreciate it. It would mean the world to me, and we will be able to bring on a lot more big names if you help us out. Now let's get back to the show.
And how business works, right? And I'm playing with all these things in theory, but I can take that and then apply it the next day when I'm sitting across a seller's table, and it's just like business-wise, it made a lot of sense. And then I had the opportunity to really like see behind the curtain of the mindset,
Right.
of the people, the clients that we deal with on a regular basis, and how a successful operation looks like, from our end. So there was so many things happening at the same time, and I was like, "Yep, I'm in the spot. Like this is good."
Yeah, I love
write
that,
it out.
dude.
Yeah.
What was your favorite thing about working for Sean Terry? I feel like Sean's the man, right? Like I know Sean.
Yeah.
Dude, I think it's funny you say that because I think Sean was like, I must have started listening to him, I don't know, dude, early on though, similar to you. Like I remember vividly seeing Flip to Freedom,
Flip to freedom.
right on the pod.
.com.
And I remember like the graphic I think was super bad back then, like that he had like the little thumbnail photo or whatever. But like, dude, he was one of the OGs.
Yeah.
So what here
Absolutely.
you are, you go and you work for the guy, right? Which by the way, I tell people all the time, one piece of advice that I give people all the time, whether they want to be a successful agent or a wholesaler or whatever, is go find somebody in your market that's killing the game and go work for them.
Yeah. You got to cut the learning curve somehow.
Yeah.
Man. Somehow.
So what was your favorite part about doing that at the time? And was it difficult for you to swallow your pride in going from being an entrepreneur, quote unquote, to going back to technically being like an employee?
No, I don't think it was. It wasn't really that. I thought it was going to be tougher because I was used to, pointing fingers and, giving, shouting orders around and all that stuff. But it really wasn't, man. I mean, I felt like I was going into a space which I didn't know. And I've always been I see myself as a lifelong student. Yeah. So I like to walk into places with an open mindset. And I think I was doing that at that point.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know what I don't know. These guys obviously know something I don't know. So ego is not my amigo. I'm going to leave that aside.
I like that one.
And then, just be here and do the best I can with the skill set that I didn't have yet, right? And do the best. I was looking for win-wins. Really, it's really what was happening there. I think one of my favorite things to answer your question was the autonomy. I mean, I had I would come into the office. We would come in for Monday meetings. And then do a Monday meeting, a couple of hours, and have lunch as a team and all that stuff. The rest of the week, I was out. The team would be in house. The lead manager and all everybody else. But I would be out there. I would go from my house and then just pound the streets and talk to sellers, sit in front of them, negotiate and all that stuff, follow ups, and then come back next week with deals on the table. Like that was my thing, right? But I had a lot of autonomy when it came to my schedule. I wasn't, for example, I wasn't required, right, to work on Saturdays and Sundays, which, as an entrepreneur, like I think my last weekend was in 2006. But it's I had the ability to push the envelope. I think like that was the biggest thing. It's like, all right, cool. You're telling me that I can earn as much as I, merit based. Like, I'm game. Let's go.
Love that.
Yeah, let's go.
What? So you kind of already answered it. Here you are, right? You go to work for Sean. What was your role like at the time? Because when was this? 2013 ish.
Yeah.
Okay. So here you are. What was working back then? Like obviously, I mean, dude, like we're talking about a totally different era, right?
Yeah.
Like I didn't get into 2014.
Yeah.
And I was doing like bandit signs. I was doing direct mail. Like nobody was like texting or cold calling. Like there was no investor lift. There was no like none of that crap existed. So like, what were you guys doing? You said you were just door knocking?
No. I was at that point. I door knocked before for a while, but no, at that point, Sean was putting a lot of money into PPC leads, and then we had cold calling. going on. So those two.
Okay.
PPC was just expensive. I mean, it got to a point where, I mean, even back then, bro, we're talking, upwards of $350 a lead.
Wow.
And then I remember Steve Trang always talks about this because Brent and I would be out there, and then we'd compete for deals, right? And Brent Daniels. And but one thing that Steve was doing as well was PPC. So like the ad spend started getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So it got more cost effective to jump more into the cold calling space of it. So I mean, evergreen strategies, bro.
Yeah.
It's not the sexiest thing, right? But there's certain things that we can roll into a business and then expect those things to have longevity. Algorithms change all the time when you're talking social media ads, so you have to stay on top of that kind of stuff. It's almost like its own little dedicated role, right? But yeah, back then and even now, man, like even now in my business, the backbone marketing strategy that we have is cold calling. Then we bolt on SMS and PPC in select areas and that sort of thing. So,
I love that, dude.
Yeah.
Back then, like, I guess my question is, are you still going on appointments, or is somebody on your team still going on appointments, or has that evolved into everything being over the phone now, in terms of, because you were saying back then your primary role was sitting at the dinner table.
There was no such thing as closing over the phone. Like it's like
Nobody heard of that.
Yeah, like what? You close the deal over the phone? That's crazy. So I mean, it was the way that we were doing things right before, and I think the relationship building got a lot better. The skill set of closing got a lot more fine tuned. Empathy, it's a lot easier to grasp when you're across the table from somebody. And so you really, really pick out the problems. When you walk a property, you pick a lot of details, through that. So there's a distinct advantage in being in person. I always like push it, right? Even when I talk to my students now, it's like, if you have the ability to go in person, meet that seller, like do that. Like it's way better. If it's in your backyard, there's absolutely no reason why you shouldn't be. You don't have a car, take an Uber, figure it out. Right, but you do whatever you can to be in person if you're trying to fine tune your skill set. Once you're set and you can negotiate and understand all that stuff, then it's more of an optional thing. But yeah, it was just the way we were doing things back then. I mean, I was going on 5 to 6 seller appointments a day.
Wow.
I mean, it's one after the other. By 6 p.m., 5 p.m., 6 p.m., I was spent because I spent hours talking to sellers.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean now, most of our stuff, and we're in a couple of different markets. We just opened up Indianapolis. We're here, and of course we do stuff in other areas, Tampa. So it's difficult right now. Because of the ease of software and a lot of tools out there that we didn't used to have, it became easier to tap into bigger different markets. So yeah, you just got to go virtual.
Yeah, you do.
So 90% of my team is virtual. And when I think, I mean, with that same token, I think like 90% of the deals we get are virtual.
Yeah.
We hardly ever see the sellers in person.
Really?
Yeah. And when we do, we'll see them if they're in this, in this market, right? And my dispo manager actually goes out and meets them. So it's.
What did you learn back in the day from sitting at the dinner table? Like, because I did the same thing, right?
Yeah.
When I got into wholesaling, man, I remember like it was yesterday. I was Josiah Grimes and Torsten Colson and Cody Sperber. They would give me their old leads, and they'd be like, "Drive to Casa Grande," and like
go get it.
Yeah, dude. Yeah. And I would, bro. I would drive my freaking what out there, and I'd knock on the door, and I'd come back with a contract almost every time, right?
Yeah.
And I learned a lot, dude. Like I learned so much about every little detail, right? Like just walking through the property and like getting the owner to give you a tour of the property, right?
Yeah.
And kind of like saying the right thing while you're getting that tour from the owner, right? Like you can't, like there's things you can and can't say if you're trying to build rapport with them, for example, right? And you want them to sign a contract. Like I can't trash talk their property while we're walking through it with them, right? Like there's little things you learn, And so like what was it for you that you learned? Because you talk a lot about like psychology, and you were doing that in college and all these different things, and then now you're in the house, right? In the home with people, and I guarantee there was a lot that you learned.
Oh, absolutely, man. I think understanding. I mean, I actually teach this. I just did a training for Batch, actually. Batch services their entire staff, but behavioral tendencies and I call it's a communication for performance class, right? But it's understanding behavioral profiles and how to approach people. Through, if you've looked at, for example, DISC, right? How you can use that and really just navigate conversations. Body language tells you a lot. Right now you're talking, I mean, I'm just going to throw one little cue or one little tip out there, but for example, you're talking rapport, right? Understanding that rapport is not necessarily when you spend 2 or 3 hours talking about the football game. Like, that's just a conversation. When you have rapport, there's subconscious cues that are going to tell you that you have rapport. It's not when we mirror them, which if you're in sales, like you understand the whole mirroring thing.
Mirroring and matching.
Isopraxism and all that stuff. So it's when they subconsciously start mirroring you, you're on the same page. So I mean,
elaborate. How do you pull that off?
That's pretty interesting. Really, solution-based mentality, bro. You go in, and then it's not really about manipulation. It's about being empathetic, right? People are gonna have certain guards up already, just out of the gate, because you're going out there to buy their house, right? This person is gonna want to eat me up on the roof. Like, I'm gonna tell them that I switched the roof, 8 years ago, and whatever, right? So there's certain battles that they're ready for, right? And if we go in there, picking on those traditional battles, which is what everybody else does. All right, I'm gonna drive your price down on the rehab cost because there's this and that, and trash talk the property. Like, it's gonna cue one response, right? But there's a lot of things that we can do when we're face to face. That's why I say it's a distinct advantage to be in front of somebody, because you can read body language, right? If I'm saying something, somebody leans in, for example, right? Like they're paying more attention to what I'm saying. So I want to drive in a little deeper on that. If they push back from the table, if they cross their arms, if they do any pacifying movements, for example, grabbing their arms or their ears, stuff like that. It's a subconscious trigger for something that's causing anxiety. So it's taking the conversation in a different route. What do? We just pull back from it a little bit, and then go into a different point of the conversation. One really cool thing that happens when you have rapport built, and this is something that I learned the theory in books, right? But seeing it, from 1,200 people across the table, like, that's when oh shit, like, this is true. Yeah. It works. Is when people start mirroring us, right? For example, if I'm at the table with them and I lean forward, if rapport is built and we're on the same frequency or same page when it comes to how well we're getting along, how good the conversation is going, they are going to mirror you in some fashion. So it's crazy. It happens. I mean, you see it at restaurants all the time. Look at a couple that's dating. The guy leans forward, the girl leans forward. Somebody takes a drink, the other person takes a drink, or they'll push the drink towards getting it closer. But there's little cues there, and the only thing that those are, right, it's they're like checklists or check marks. Okay, you're on the right track of the conversation, right? What happens, right? As we know the conversation, we know the script, we know all that stuff, right? One thing that I think we have to be proficient on too, just as much, is deal structuring. Right? If we're putting out there a wholesale offer, it's not going to pan out. I mean, be honest about it. Like, you're going to make more money if you go on the MLS and all that stuff, right? But what else can happen? Can we pivot that conversation into, renovations conversation or seller financing conversation? Just alternate, ways of closing the deal, monetizing on that lead by understanding what their problem is. But they will tell you a lot when you're in front of them without having to say it. You know what I mean?
I love that.
And I think that was the biggest thing, just navigating the conversational space, which to me is just, it's amazing. I mean, you take that and then you use it, you apply it with your, family. I play with my kids all the time. Yeah. Like, they're saying something, like, I know your body's telling me totally, something else.
Right. So how do you, man, I love that. And for people watching, how, because it applies to everything, right? I mean, like, if somebody's watching right now and they want to get better at going to the bar and talking to girls, right? Yeah. I would imagine it's the same or very similar principles as building rapport with a homeowner across a dinner table, right? And getting them to sign a purchase contract or whatever, Yeah. You talked about serving them and having kind of a service-based kind of proposition, right? So, like, how does one, if somebody's watching right now and they don't know they're not good at building rapport, they're shy, or they're, I don't know, like how do they get better? Do they just do it 1,200 times like you, or?
They got to do it 1,200 times in a matter of 3 years.
It's repetition, right?
Repetition.
Are there any ways to
No, absolutely. So one thing I would recommend is if you haven't studied behavioral profiles, I would highly suggest you do. It's crazy, bro, but we're psychological algorithms. We are, and you don't have to go too crazy and get degrees and all that kind of stuff. Just pick up a book on DISC training. The DISC profile, DISC. It talks about drivers, influencers, supportives, and then calculating or compliant personalities, right? But it's a super. That's kind of like the 50,000 foot view of what we are as human beings. But that will give you a really good idea of how that person is kind of wired to think. And then as you get more proficient on it, you're going to understand how people just kind of adapt their behaviors based on experiential and their background, right? But one really easy way to get into it and start understanding how people are going to react is behavioral profiles. So for example, I mean, we're high drivers.
Yep.
And your secondary, for example, your secondary, I think you and I have very similar profile.
Probably.
Your secondary is a high I. So I mean, you're good at getting in there with people and having that conversation and bottom line result oriented, that sort of thing, right? So one thing, for example, if I'm selling you on something, if I'm trying to get you to be on the same page with me, like the last thing that I want to do is come in and then pull a ton of stats in front of you, because I'm gonna it's good for you to have that kind of information in front of you if you want it, right?
Right.
And you just want to make sure that the person you're talking to covers their bases. So that would be one thing, right? And then you have the crazy thing is that you have so many companies out there that sell through scripts, and this is what you got to show them the entire presentation. You go through when you understand behavioral profiles, we close people in the way that they want to be closed, right?
It's different, right? Person by person.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not that difficult, right? Once you start understanding the overall concept to kind of peg people per se. That's exactly the training that I teach, that I'm telling you about. But it's funny because you start walking around and seeing people in colors, bro. Like it's I don't know.
Do you do the color test? Do you know which one I'm talking about? It's like red, yellow, white, and blue. Really quick, if you're a real estate agent in the state of Arizona and you're looking to join a phenomenal team, then I would love to have a conversation with you. If you're looking for an incredible culture, you're looking for lead generation, you're looking for transaction coordination, then I would love to have a conversation and see if you would be a great fit for our team, okay? So again, if you're an agent in the state of Arizona, make sure you text the number 480-418-5339, the word agent, okay? Again, 480-418-5339, the word agent. Now let's go ahead and get back to the show. It's like a color test. I don't know.
No.
I'll get the name of it for you after this.
Yeah.
One of my business partners, he loves giving the color test to everybody.
No, I haven't heard of the color tests. So for example, in DISC, you have different profiles or different colors, but
it's probably the same thing.
Probably, yeah. So even for hiring, right? Like there's certain roles that you want to hire based on natural strengths. We have natural strengths, and then we have adaptive. The thing is, like we move around all of these behavioral profiles, but we're always going to have a primary and secondary. Those are going to be the most evident, right? And like the stuff that we revert back to when we're under stress. What happens every single time a person is selling their house? Like they're under stress,
right?
Like
every
especially
time.
When they're talking
especially
to
if they're
us.
Distressed.
Like, bro, they're not talking to us because they're being super happy and they're in the market and they're getting there's some type of stress.
They want full market value. No,
exactly.
Yeah.
So there's a degree of stress, and now understanding how people react when they're under stress is a huge thing, right? So you have to. There's ways of mitigating those conversations if you understand behavioral profiles.
You almost have to, I think, to succeed at a really high level, right? I mean, like, because you're gonna fail if you don't, right? Like, if you think about it, if somebody's watching right now, because I didn't necessarily study this in college or whatever, but I think I got good at all this almost on accident. Like, I didn't I didn't go out and intentionally get good at it.
Yeah.
I failed so many times that I eventually got good.
You start picking up a pattern, right? Repetition, bro.
I didn't even know why I was good. I just am like, oh man, I'm really good with people. I can really read people, right?
Or you walk into a room, right, and you see somebody who's like, oh, this person is that type.
Yep.
Like that's exactly what it is. It's just from an organized fashion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, man, like you have to do it. I think you have to get good at it. Like if you're gonna go and do sales or you're gonna do marketing or branding, I mean the world that we live in, how can you survive in the world and not? I guess like you see people who are super introverted, maybe I just feel like people are doing themselves a huge disservice by not understanding human psychology.
Yeah.
Right? And like how to interact with other humans.
Yeah, and think of it as practical, right? Practical psychology. It doesn't mean that you have to understand get into the weeds of it all, but having a good context of how people process information is going to help you out a lot.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Especially when you're trying to craft a solution. Like a lot of times we'll see somebody and they're very quiet and they're not sharing much and you're thinking, man, this person is a jerk. Yeah. Like it's not that, right? They're just extreme, introverts, for example, right? Or their context or the situation where they're at does not allow them to express themselves the way they would normally.
Yeah.
And if you have the ability to pick up on that kind of stuff, you can be more empathetic.
I love that.
And really just meet them at where they're at, which at the end of the day, like that's what we got to do.
Yeah. I love that, dude. And there's so many different things that I want to talk about. So going back to your story for a minute, you went and you worked for Sean, right? Yeah. And at what point did you leave and go do your own thing again?
I think it was about 3 years into it. Yeah, so around 2016, I think. 2016, yeah. I had at that point I had already sold the other business, the transportation business. So I mean,
you were out of that.
Yeah, I was out of that, and I did well on the exit. So I think that's also one thing that helped me. A lot of times if you're in survival mode, it's kind of tough, right? It's tough to get into it. But I wasn't on the intentional mode, when I went into it, and I sold that, and then I just went. I think I did a few more flips. After that, and then I went into wholesaling and then just kind of building out the entire machine.
The entire thing. Yeah. So you learned a lot with working with Sean, right?
Yeah.
And then did you kind of get into flipping or wholesaling when you left initially? You said you did a little bit of both, right?
Yeah. So flips.
Okay.
So I went after I left, I went into flips for a while, and then I went back into wholesaling.
What did you like about flipping? And what do you like about wholesaling? And do you still do both, or do you just wholesale now?
I'll cherry pick flips, and they're not really flips. I mean, they're like an excuse of a flip, really. It's like lipstick, rehabs and that kind of stuff. So I cherry pick. That's what I love about being in the front line of that deal, right? Like in the front seat.
You can make,
you pick and choose. But yeah, no, like the stuff that I do is not like I don't like to go heavy on the flips. Basic stuff I'm okay with. We'll come in and then add another, $40,000 revenue on the back end of whatever deal.
Yep.
So we'll do that kind of stuff, right? But no, I mean, to me, it's wholesaling. I like being in the deal and then out of the deal, in the deal and out of the deal, and then just moving on to the next stuff.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, and I think at this point, I mean, I got to play. Was like one of the things that happened with Sean is that I got to play with his company, which he gave me that liberty. Right. So he was like, okay, so we started looking at scorecards. I would, because I was going through a degree in business and all that stuff, I would look at things like, all right, can we plug in a few things and then tweak the KPIs? And that kind of became, the lab. Right. So I came in and actually built, he had a version of a scorecard. I came in and built the final scorecard and added a bunch of KPIs and tweaked, it just showed me a lot on the performance side. So when I launched and did my own thing, I kind of picked up on that, right? Or from that, and then started, plugging in the processes. And it's an ongoing thing, man. Like you're always, something changes in the marketing space, or whatever. You have to come back to the drawing board and figure that shit out. And then, come in and do it again. I don't think people realize like how much work goes into wholesaling.
It's wild, bro.
Oh, it's like I just do an assignment agreement and like get all kinds of money. But what about the years it takes you to understand how to negotiate?
Yeah.
What about the marketing strategies? What about
Well, I think there's a lot of people who they just see they just see the benefit of doing like a deal, right?
Right.
But it's like, okay, there's a big difference between randomly doing a deal
Right,
and
right.
turning this into a legitimate business that prints capital month after month after month, right?
Yep.
And that takes a lot of freaking work, dude. Like, I'll
Yeah.
tell you what. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, we have, like everybody else, right? There's highs and lows and whatnot. Sometimes we get bogged down. I think everybody got hit last year. And I mean, a lot of people just kind of fell off the wagon on that, right? Like you see a lot less, people wholesaling, and now like kind of jumping back into it because of what happened with interest rates and sellers still wanting, retail, and buyers kind of, leaving the entire scene for a while. And so just coming back and kind of recovering from that kind of stuff is like, it's important to be systematic. Like, that's what I'm trying to get to, right? Like, you can't really hustle. Like I keep saying, hustle is a season. It's not a business strategy. And it's the hustle attitude. It's a tool. We can come in and use it. It's gonna get us places, right? But it's not sustainable. At the end of the day, like, you have to come in and then have a process in place where you can actually delegate and automate some of this stuff and create that longevity and that consistency. Because a hustle approach is not really going to give you that, like you say, money printing machine every single month. Like, you're going to get deals here and there, but then you have, the peaks and the valleys, and that's, people get tired, people get burned out.
What do you think the biggest mistake is that people make when wholesaling?
Turn off their marketing. Woo. Turn off their marketing.
Really? And when do you see that?
Dude, I see it all the time.
But like, when do they do that? Why do they?
Well, I mean, they get, this is one thing that, and you, if you're a wholesaler and you've done, I don't know, maybe 3 deals, right? You like, there's no way you can't tell me this is not true. But solo, like, if you're a solo operation, right? You'll come in, you lock up a deal.
Okay.
Now you have the deal under contract. You're super excited, especially if you're coming in. You get a deal every now and then, right? You're excited about that one contract. You take that and then you start selling it to your buyers list, and spending all this time putting paperwork together for title and babysitting the deal, and then making sure that everything's done and then it's closing. What you're not doing for those 2 weeks is lead generation if you don't have a system in place.
Yep.
So what happens? You sell that deal, you get paid, and then you're dry. Your pipeline's dry because you didn't generate, any more leads, right? So what happens? You lose consistency. Now you got to put most of that revenue that you got from that deal into lead generation again, as opposed to if you keep the machine going, right? And then just kind of, drop a quarter, every day into it. It's gonna stay, running. You don't have to go through that gap. The first thing to go is really marketing on anytime somebody gets squeezed. I had dude, I can tell you, like, the big conversation on most of my coaching calls over the last 6 months was, I got to stop my marketing. Like, no, you don't.
Yeah.
Figure out.
Why is that the first thing that people think about cutting?
Overhead, right? Like, well, I gotta pay the VAs. I gotta pay, whatever. I have, expenses and things and that. Of course, overhead in the business in general, right? But it's there's something about marketing. Like, I think people feel they can come in and turn it off and then turn it back on, turn it off and turn it back on. But when we do that, we're almost like it's almost like a prophecy, coming, true about our business model. Like, okay, we're gonna create this dry, streak if we turn the marketing off.
Yeah.
What happens? Dry streak comes in, turn the marketing off. I'm not getting any deals, and people fall off the wagon. So the biggest thing and most dangerous thing is to turn off the marketing. And I'm saying that in general, right? If you're turning off, PPC or cold calling or something, make sure that you have at least a good resource for referrals, right? Something that keeps sending you leads on a regular basis to keep that activity going.
Yeah.
Right. For example, if you work with real estate agents, right? If you build those relationships and they're automatically sending you leads in, you're not really turning off the marketing. What kills you is when you turn everything off completely and you only have that one source of leads.
Yeah. What's a good example of that? Like, somebody's doing specifically cold calling, right?
Yeah.
And they pull the plug. They have a VA full time and they're like, they pull the plug on the cold calling.
Yeah.
I guess the big one is when they're doing the marketing.
Yeah.
In the very beginning. And then, like you said it best, like, then they have to go be a transaction coordinator and they have to go do the disposition. They have to sell the deal. And now they can't possibly do everything, right? So now they're not doing any marketing. So
what I do for that, or part of the stuff that I talk about is is it's allocation of time. How do you distribute your time, right? Like in the morning, give yourself a certain time, give yourself a couple of hours to work on new leads, right? Generate those new leads. And then you're going to give yourself, a certain amount of time to work on the follow-ups. And then you're going to give yourself a certain amount of time to work on the actual deals.
Yep.
Like you have to be 10 times more disciplined when you're by yourself than when you have a team. I'm not saying don't be disciplined when you have a team, but it's a lot more important because now it's you versus you, right? It's you capitalizing on your money and your time. Like if you don't have the ability, like at that point, time is your money. If you don't have the ability to really allocate and time block your day, like it's easy to get just so much noise in your head and excited about this one thing and get the shiny object effect going on with that one thing and then forget about everything else.
Yeah, 1,000,000%. What is the form of marketing and wholesaling that you dislike the most?
That I dislike the most.
Or like that doesn't work, like in your opinion. Like you're just like, dude, like don't freaking do that type of marketing. If you're trying to get a seller to raise their hand, like don't do that. Fill in the blank.
I think it's the first time somebody asks me that question. They always like, what's the best form of marketing? Like I'm biased. I'm biased to cold calling, right?
Right.
But I honestly think they all work if you do them enough. There's certain drawbacks to, I think, all of them. For example, if you're talking direct mail got super expensive, right? So it's like, in my opinion, it's not cost effective to just do a blast of direct mail.
You got to keep doing it.
No, to do a blast of like a big list. So we'll do direct mail marketing for niched out lists. We'll stack different lists, and for example, anything that we have stacked on 6 or more lists, we can do a direct mail campaign on, right? It's more targeted, there's more pain points, and it's usually a smaller, hotter type of avatar on that list.
Yep.
So like I think that's one of them. RVMs, they work. I was never a huge fan of RVMs, just because they pissed me off. And I don't know, it's just like RVMs. Yeah, they work phenomenally though. The reason I bring them up is that they work really good for the dispo side. We use them for the dispo side.
How does that recording go?
It's
hey, Mr. The buyer, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, we do like super, like it's a very nonchalant, super simple, recording. Hey, how's it going? I hope all is well. We have one in 85340. I know you bought one in that area. So I was reaching out. If you're interested, just let me know, right? So it's very evergreen type stuff, very generic when it comes to the zip code. So we won't we don't do the address unless they call us.
Yeah.
Even when we email stuff out, we won't do the address anymore.
Yep.
But on RVM, so we send out to our buyers list, and we have thousands of buyers on that list. Then they start, it's funny, but you send that out and then the phone starts ringing.
Oh yeah. Big time. I'll bet.
So
what about bandit signs? When I think about the worst form of marketing, I'm like, but they still work though. I know a guy in Florida.
Yeah.
And
that's what I'm saying. Some people crush it. Bro, to me, bandit signs, no.
Yeah, in Phoenix, I can't imagine, right? You'd have a better shot of, I don't know, going, just walking around.
Craigslist.
Yeah, you literally, right? Offer up. Yeah. But dude, I know a guy in Florida, I kid you not, dude, his whole business is bandit signs.
Yeah.
And he murders it, right? And I'm just like, dude, that would never work where I'm at.
Yeah, it's funny, man.
Yeah.
And every market is also, every market is different too. Indianapolis. I mean, I have a very specific way I do research every time we look at new markets in anywhere in the country, and the numbers seemed right and went into Indianapolis. And the conversations are a lot. I'm always getting feedback from the team, right? What are you guys seeing in terms of conversations? What's going on out there? They're not pushing back as much. They're a lot more open to having those conversations. Some of these guys, some of these people have never gotten an offer on a property. It's like, what? You know what I mean? So it's interesting how each market is gonna just kind of. I mean, I think Maricopa here, Phoenix, right? It's I think we've hit it, every possible way under the sun, and people are just they just know it, right?
Yeah.
I think for us here, especially here in the Valley, it's it's a long-term play now. If you've been in the space and you're actually building up and then being systematic and all that stuff, you're gonna make it in the Valley. But otherwise, you have to be just understanding that different strategies are they all work, right? If you do them long enough, I think they're just drawbacks. Like for me, I'm not too crazy about bandit signs either. It's not even for the dispo side. We tried it on the dispo side
dude.
for a while.
Other wholesalers call you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, hey, let me daisy chain your problem.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
So what is your favorite part about cold calling? Like why is cold calling, when I ask you and I'm like, hey, dude, what's your favorite, right? And you're like, cold calling, how come?
it's risky. Run the DNC, run the litigator list, and try to be as compliant as possible. So I want to put that out there first and foremost. But I mean, I think it's the way that I do it works out well for me. So we have a team of cold callers, right? And they have a super simple script. Basically, what my team of cold callers does is they gauge for interest. Like they're going through the records. They're not even going through leads. They're just going through the records, through those thousands and thousands and thousands of records that we have on spreadsheets and phone numbers, right? So they're sitting there, they're dialing, and then they're having that initial conversation just to see if somebody raises their hand. They're not presenting any offers. They're not pre-qualifying anything. They're just like, okay, cool. You would like an offer? Awesome.
And it's literally that's it.
That's it.
Okay. So I mean, we're talking about a 15-second, 20, 30-second conversation. I mean, short, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
I mean, maybe they get a little personal just, because they're human beings and they're talking to another human being.
Right.
But it's nothing crazy. So they won't go into, pre-qualifying or any of that stuff. All they do is they tell them that, the manager is going to call them, within, I think we have right now we have a response time with like under an hour or something.
Okay.
So, they raise their hand. And I know like some people kind of flinch at like you're handing over the call when you already have them on the phone. Like to us, it just makes more sense because of volume.
Yep.
And I've tried it in a couple, a bunch of different ways. And this is the one that's panning out well. So they do that and they tee it over to my lead manager. My lead manager, she's, and you have tiers of employees as you're building up the company. The attrition level on cold callers is pretty high. Right. I mean, normally I think it's less than 3 months for an average cold caller. Like,
where do you hire them?
Now we hire directly.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
okay.
we hire directly, and I recently partnered up with another company, so we're hiring, from within that same.
Not in the U.S. though, right?
No, they're not U.S.
Okay.
They're all VAs.
Got it.
They're bilingual.
Okay.
Like my team, my in-house team is in the Philippines, but now they're all direct hires.
Okay, cool.
And I hired one directly, and then she started hiring her friends, and it's like they have their own get-togethers, and they have like team building, events and all kinds of stuff that I don't know, pay like $100, and they go to a resort over there, and
I love that.
It's just the monetary system is different, but they get to have that team experience, right? Which is really cool.
Really cool. Yep.
Tangent, but it matters. Anyways, cold callers, they source a lead, they send it over to my lead manager.
Yep.
My lead manager pre-qualifies based on timeline, condition, motivation, and price, or condition, timeline, motivation, and price. Right, and then she has this particular conversation, and she's more versed in how to actually have an understanding conversation with them.
Yep.
And then there are certain things that she's listening for as she's going through this process. So I mean, we have this entire process, and she's clicking. Okay, this person fits the sell within 30 days. Boom. And then this is a divorce situation. Boom. And then this is it. So we have this entire process right in place. And she's going through a pre-qualification, process as she's doing this. What happens next is that she's allowed to do soft passes. I wasn't allowing that, but then a lot of stuff made it over to acquisitions that didn't make sense. So she's allowed to do soft passes, and we'll do soft passes from 65 to 80% of Zillow, right? Like super, like no analysis, nothing crazy.
Of what the sellers said that they wanted.
No, of the Zillow price.
Got it.
So we'll look at Zillow and because, tell me your offer. Like, what's your number, right? Like we always get that. So she's allowed to do 65 to 80%.
Okay.
And a lot of the leads, fall off from there. And what we do is just throw them on a follow-up queue. Like we'll call them up like long-term follow-up for 6 months or so. We don't get rid of the record because they already raised their hand.
Yep.
But we'll follow up later, right? If they say, they decide whether or not they want to continue the conversation. If they want to continue the conversation, we send them over to acquisitions. Right, so it's kind of like an assembly line. So you have cold calling, you have lead gen, and then you have acquisitions. So the numbers kind of pan out like this, right? If we're reaching out to 1,000 people, 100 raise their hand, 100 go to lead gen, right? And out of those 100, 10, end up in acquisitions. You're not burning out your acquisition reps.
Right.
right? They're not, going through a million records that are not, going anywhere. They're talking to, semi-qualified leads. At that point, they've already had 2 contacts. They've done a soft pass. So by the time they get there, like there's something to talk about. You know what I mean? And like that process alone, I think is very like it's very effective for keeping acquisitions in their lane. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And then doing what they like. They're snipers. Like when you have a good acquisition rep, like you want to make sure that they get legit shots
For sure.
right at what they're
Especially when
going
they're
for.
good, right?
Yeah.
If you were brand new, who would be the first person that you would hire, like on your team? Like, would you go for an AC guy? I guess to even clarify the question more, probably assuming they've done a deal or 2 or 3 and they've got a little bit of money, right? Like, how would you start to construct the team?
I would go for the role would be lead gen.
Okay.
So it's that second person in the assembly line.
Yep.
But because that second person could be cold calling, and then they could be doing SMS campaigns as well.
So you could have them do both.
Yeah. Yeah, I would have them do both and then start training them up for, to understand the pre-qualification process, like the deeper conversations. And it's different scripts. Like for the cold callers, we have a very simple 1-page script. And then we moved on to lead gen, I call it the discovery call. During that discovery call, there's different things that they look for, right? But the lead gen manager is the person she gets very proficient, or he gets very proficient at that one conversation. So I would do that role. I would after things scale up, the next one would be cold caller, and then I would do transaction coordinator.
Okay.
And then dispo and ec.
Really?
Yeah.
So in the beginning, would you have them disposition the deals themselves, or would they just use a dispo house, or use another wholesaler, or use?
If the volume is too, if you don't have a buyer's list and that sort of thing, just partner up.
Yep.
It's better to get 50% of a deal than no percent of a deal.
Yeah, 1,000,000%. Dude.
Yeah, and a lot of people won't even go for the 50%. There's people out there who partner up with you and use their buyer's list for $5K or whatever. So that's always conducive at the beginning. Like what you want is don't get bogged down on like I want to squeeze the last dollar out of this one deal right out of the gate. Like that's gonna come. Like you're gonna come to a point where you're monetizing big on the wholesale deals, right? But at first, just think about that conveyor belt, fine tuning your process. Every time you go through a deal, go back through it. We call it the improvement stage on every single deal. But we go back through a deal. Okay, where did we leave money on the table? What could we have done better, right? Was there anything that we need to roll in or roll out of that, the process as we're building it? And if you're a solo operation, it doesn't mean that you still have to think that way, right? Because you're wearing different hats. So understand which hat you're wearing at any point of the transaction. Right now, if you're on the dialer, ready mode, or whatever you're using, we use ready mode. You're a cold caller.
Yep.
Right? Okay, cool. Right now, I'm just gauging for interest. That's my cold caller hat. And if you move on in the same conversation, you move on to a discovery conversation, like, oh shit, I already moved to a lead manager. Like now I'm on the lead manager role. And if you move to the numbers, now you're in the acquisition role. It can be all in the same conversation, but it's different stages of the deal.
Yep.
So to see that is important because as we start hiring, now we know what we need to hire for. Does that make sense?
I love that. Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah.
If like looking at your wholesaling company, what's been like a big challenge that you faced when scaling your organization?
I think being clear, having clarity over the systems, over the processes. So like for example, we know the industry, we know the business in and out, right? And in our head, it's like this is common sense.
Yeah.
But somebody coming into it, or somebody coming in, say a dispo wants to do acquisitions, right? They may understand the dispo process is really good, but acquisitions is a different beast, right? So I think building the systems and putting the trainings, the onboarding processes in place to actually plug people into it and have them, walk out of there with at least 60-70% of the capacity to do deals, and then the rest of them is going to be coaching and huddle calls and all that stuff, right?
So putting all that together.
Yeah, I think just articulating the process, really making it understandable for people. Like,
it's tough, dude.
Yeah,
I think I'm still figuring it out,
bro. There's so many things that like you don't even think about,
Yeah.
right? Like as we're going through, it's like, oh man, I got to break down monsoon. Like what?
Yeah, dude. Oh my god, dude. I tell you what, We're with a brokerage called EXP. I'm sure you're familiar. And I had a guy the other day. We were talking about like revenue share, right? Anyways, long story short, apparently like a lot of people on my team don't know how to log into their dashboard to check their revenue share, right? And like that got brought to my attention like after the fact. And like in a nutshell, it's just logging into your dashboard. Like it's just you just have to be able to log in. I mean, we're not talking about like it's as simple as logging into your Instagram. I mean, like really simple stuff, right? And one of my admins or my executives was like, "Hey, can you make a video on that?" And I was like, "I'll make a freaking video on that." But
seriously, yeah.
I didn't think there was a world where I would have to make a video on that. You know, like I was blown away when she said something. I was like, "Do people really not know how to do that?"
Yeah.
Like this whole time, I thought like I just assumed like I don't know. But you're right, dude. Like
it's so true.
You got to train people on everything.
Well, I mean, I think one thing that I've gotten better at is like anytime I get a new question from a student or an employee, or I mean, at this point, I'm at a consultant capacity, and even in my business, which is really cool. But it's I'll do a video after it. I'm like, oh, cool, let's jump on a Zoom call. I'll walk you through the entire process. I'll record this thing. Then what I do is I send that to my assistant, and she knows me already, so she cleans it up. Then she cleans it up, and we have this. So I use a platform called High Level, right, for my coaching programs. I do the same stuff for my company. So inside I have an onboarding process for acquisitions. I have an onboarding process for cold callers and training for cold callers. So if you go into into my High Level, into my company, Pulse Capital, like you're gonna see a bunch of modules in there, or trainings with modules in there, and that's what those are. Anytime we roll out a new process, like we just drop it in there, and it's part of the SOP now, right? And it used to take me, bro, 3 months to train an acquisitions rep. Of my time of being in there, and then just kind of them shadowing, and then me jumping the calls and all that stuff. Now I have a 5-day onboarding process for acquisitions. They go there, and then we'll do support calls afterwards. But like everything they need to know is on there, and they can go back and review. And I think that was a big leap in actually building the business itself, right? Because now I don't have to be there all the time. Then.
Huge.
Yeah, exactly. They know what to go for. So
you have to do that. I think when building a company, everything's about duplication and really duplication, man.
Yeah.
How do I systematize? How do I build the foundation? How can people duplicate this? Like because the whole idea is for you to be able to eventually go do other stuff, right? Bigger stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, I like the emphasis on being able to do what I do from anywhere, right? And like the process that I have laid out allows me to do it, especially now that we're closing over the phone and everybody's so used to just selling a house, DocuSign, all that stuff.
Isn't that wild, by the way?
Bro, it's insane. Like that was like Back to the Future 4 in 2013. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like no, there's no way that's gonna happen.
They're never gonna sell their house over the phone.
Flat screen TVs? What?
Yeah.
No, it's silly. But it's it is, right? The future is here. So what do? We leverage that.
We do. We got to leverage it.
That. In terms of systems, I like the way that I think this is a good value add. But record yourself through Loom. There's a platform called Loom.com. I love it. Super easy. You click a button, it starts recording your screen and your camera. And I'll do that all the time, dude. Like anytime I'm doing something new, I'll record myself through Loom, and I'm walking as I'm going through the screen, right?
Yep.
Okay, I'm gonna go here to the search bar, and I'm typing in, batchleads.io or whatever, right? And then the next thing I'm gonna do, I'm gonna go to this tab on the side, so I start walking through that entire process, whatever the process is. Then I take that link and I send it over to whoever's gonna review it or whatnot. But what I do too is I taught my assistant. She was kind of like my ChatGPT before ChatGPT was a thing. But I taught my assistant to do.
She might have been using ChatGPT.
Yeah, she might have. She probably does now. It's crazy. But it's I taught her how to build systems.
Yeah.
Build a system for systems, if that makes sense, right? So she's got that process, and dude, it's crazy. She's also a VA, but it's like, Have you ever heard those like the tutorial videos that
Yeah.
they have all the pauses and they have
Like perfect.
What we are going to do today is
Yeah.
gonna be like
Like, sounds like a robot.
Yeah, it's exactly like that. It was like, man, this is amazing. She does that. So we'll do a video breakdown with segments and then bullet points underneath, just kind of breaking the entire thing down.
I love
And
that.
it's not that difficult, right? You have you end up with a bunch of SOPs that are 2-3 minutes long, and then you start adding them. If you don't have a platform like high level like the one I use, I mean, you can drop them to a Google Drive, and then okay, this is my Google Drive training for acquisitions.
Yep.
This is for dispo. This is what happens. Everything that happens inside the cold calling world. You know, so yeah, trust me, like it's gonna.
You have to do
The
it.
sooner you jump on that, the easier your life's gonna be. So.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
When do you think people should flip a house, and when should they wholesale? Like, how do you know? Like, if you're, I feel like people watch like HGTV nowadays, and they see Tariq El Moussa, and they get all fired up, right?
Yeah.
They're like, oh man, like I feel like anybody and everybody, they just in Wisconsin, they're like sitting in their living room, and they're like, you know, they see HGTV, and they're like, man, I want to go flip a house, right? And a lot of times it is not probably a good thing for a lot of people to do, right? So like when should they make that decision? Hey, I should flip or I should wholesale? Because you said you don't even love flipping.
No, I've done it when I see the value, right? And I think the biggest thing for me is lifestyle, man. Like if it's something that's gonna suck up a lot of my time, I rather make less money than deal with that. I mean, at this point, it's just the stage where I'm at, right? Like I think I figured out what I want to do, and I say I think because that may change in 2 years. I don't know. But for now, like, okay, I know what my lifestyle or the lifestyle that I want. I know what that looks like. I know the level of freedom that I have. I know the the responsibilities I have. I know the impact that I'm making on the world around me, my family, my students, my friends, and, that sort of stuff, right? So I have a good grip on that. And if I see something that's gonna throw a wrench into it, it's like, oh, okay, cool. I mean, that's a red flag, right? So I'll step back and unless the the juice is very, very worth the squeeze, I'll just I'll wholesale that. Or one thing that I've done in the past too, like for bigger projects, I partner up with other people. Like I bring
idea.
the deal. I'll get somebody to run the teams, and then somebody else runs logistics.
Yep.
So we usually have a 3 split and stuff like that. And now I'm part of a bigger deal that I wasn't gonna do anyways. You know what I mean?
Yeah, which is a phenomenal idea. I think
Yeah.
everybody should do that, right?
Yeah. Who not how? Yeah.
Yeah, 1,000,000%. And I don't think people should just get it. Flipping, I think, is a man. You gotta, even me, dude. I'm not a huge like flipping guy. I mean, I always talk about it, right? I always tell my team, I'm like, man, we should flip more,
Yeah.
And then like I'll think about it for like an hour.
Well, I mean, the
and I'm
zeros are
like,
sexy.
Yeah. And I'm like, nah, like well, let's just wholesale,
Yeah.
I think if anything, it maybe is more like I want to buy more rentals.
Yeah.
So do you have a rental portfolio by any chance?
I did. I liquidated the portfolio a couple years ago. What I'm looking at now is commercial stuff. So I'm looking at, and again, like I'm partnering up with people who know a lot more about that stuff than me.
Yeah.
I mean, like one of the guys, like he's a freaking legend when it comes to commercial in my eyes, right? Like the guy knows a lot of easy way to structure deals, and he has a very creative way of going about it. John Troutman, big shout out to him.
Yep.
But he does a bunch of commercial stuff here in the Valley. He has multiple buildings and all that stuff. So like that's one of the people that I'm learning from. And again, like if commercial stuff, I'll look at. Like it's a big project, it's scary. Like I'll even something like that, I'll look at it, right? But I know that I don't necessarily want to grow that that same stuff on the residential side. So I think it's a lifestyle. When somebody flips and when somebody wholesales. To me, I wholesale as much as possible unless it's like a stupid thing to.
Yeah, I think you bring up a great point, right? Which is like, what's your goal?
Yeah.
Like you made a good point. Like your goal is you have a really good grip, and you said it, on the impact you're making and your friends and your family and the freedom that you have, right?
Yeah.
And I think you have to ask yourself at a certain point, like, what's my goal, right?
Yeah.
What am I trying to
What do I want?
accomplish?
It's such a simple question, but I think that it's easy not to ask that question. Like ask ourselves that question.
Yeah.
Like, what do I really want? Not what does my family want? What do my kids want? What do my significant other want? What do my business partners want? Like, what do I want? What kind of lifestyle do I want to live? What kind of effort do I want to be putting out there on a single basis or on a everyday basis, right? What kind of returns do I want? What kind of house do I want? What kind of like we get I think mesmerized, with social media and what everybody else is doing.
Yeah.
And you have this like, I should be doing more because I saw that over there. I saw that over there. And then what happens is that your entire context becomes a borrowed version of everybody else's life as opposed to our own life. Okay. So like the simplest way to kind of put it is like, what's your own truth? What's your truth? What kind of life do I want? Meditating on that is a big thing. And then I think when you do it right, you get to a space where you realize that a lot of the stuff doesn't. I used to be a big ego guy. I used to be, and like that shit wore out quickly when I had the first business, because my ego would get in the way of me moving forward, or speaking battles that were silly with employees, and it was just me being egotistical. I didn't say it right.
I think you did.
I did. Right. Nailed it.
I think.
Spanish, my Spanish broke.
You nailed it.
Like, my English gets away from me every now and then. But you know what I mean? So it's stuff like that wasn't serving me. And when you contemplate what you really want and you find, your path, your truth, and at least for now, call it, I think purpose goes into that truth as well. It doesn't have to be a lifelong thing, but right now for the next 2-3 years, what do you want? Like, what path do you want to walk? And I think that creates a lot of clarity, right? Because it gives you the power to say no to a lot of things, to say no to a lot of shiny objects that may throw you off. And I'm not saying don't look at new opportunities when they come in, but ask yourself, do they align, with the version that I want to live, the version of life that I want to live? They align with my truth, and for example, like to me, working, 10 hours a day on something that I didn't like enjoy does not. It doesn't matter how much it pays, right? It does not align with what I want, so I'm gonna say no to it.
Yeah.
It's crazy, but I think it gives a lot of power to what we do. What we choose to do on a daily too. So,
do you have to fully love it though, or do you just have to kind of like it?
No, I think it's not necessarily the path. I don't love real estate.
You're not in love with.
I'm not in love with.
You didn't come out of the womb and say, "Man, I just love real estate."
Yes.
Oh my God! Yeah,
I'm not gonna have a tattoo of real estate in my chest.
But you don't hate it either.
And if somebody does out there, I'm not like dogging on you. Like, great.
That'd be kind of weird. I think.
Yeah,
right?
it'd be kind of weird. Yeah. But it's a great vehicle, right?
Yeah.
However, I understand that it gives me the ability to live the way that I want to live. It gives me the ability to help somebody create financial wealth, right? And make that impact in somebody else's life. It gives me the ability to do that for myself.
Yeah.
It gives me the ability to have freedom over my time. It gives me the ability to have no glass ceiling. So it gives me a lot of pros that I think not any other vertical that I could tap into right now does, or any other vertical that I understand at least, does. So it's really. Not that I love the activity of real estate itself, but I love everything that it allows me to do. You know what I mean? And I think that's the bigger picture. Again, time is a big one, right? For me, at this point, I'm more zealous of my time than money, really. Like if I have no problem saying no to something if I'm going to make less money, but I don't have to sacrifice a lot of my time. If I want to spend my time sitting on the couch and watching Netflix, like that's my $1,500 an hour gig, whatever, right?
Yeah.
But it's I think it's a matter of owning my options, and real estate allows me to do that. So as a result, you become passionate, almost by collateral.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and that's always changing too, right? Like what you want now it's probably not what you wanted a decade ago, right? Like it's always changing. And so for somebody watching or listening, knowing that, I think sometimes in the beginning, it looks a whole heck of a lot different than it ends up looking a couple of years down the line. Yeah. Like I know it did for me, right? And I think you said a little while ago, like hustle is a season.
Yeah.
right? And man, I've been a lot of those seasons where I'm just freaking grinding,
Yeah.
you know? And then, but you don't have to do that forever. I mean, like you can, but you don't have to do it forever.
Well, every time we level up, we're gonna hustle again. So it doesn't really go away. You know what I mean? But be conscientious about it. You know, build whatever you need to build for that particular level of life, and then if you want to scale up, you scale up, and then just understand that you're gonna be at a different stage of life.
Yeah.
What happens at a different stage, you're gonna hustle in a different way. It's just that's the nature of the beast.
They say at every ceiling is the new floor.
Yeah, exactly.
You know?
Exactly.
It's never ending.
Yeah.
I always think to myself, I'm like, man, you know, it's wild, dude. Like, there was a day and a time where I prayed for the problems I have now.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
here
you're
I
right.
am, you know, and I'm like, if I'm not really careful, I'm not grateful.
Yeah.
Right? Like, and I've got to be really careful. And every day I've got to wake up and I've got
It's
to practice
huge.
the gratitude, right? Because,
It is a practice. Yeah.
yeah, dude, like, otherwise you get so caught up, like you were saying earlier, right? In what you don't have or what somebody else has or whatever.
What's
like,
going
how do
wrong?
Yeah. How do you do that? Like, do you have a daily routine? Do you have things that you do? Like, how do you not fall into the trap of looking at other people on social media or looking at the gap between where you're at and where you still want to go and not being grateful? Like, how do you stay in a positive place mentally as you continue to build?
So my mornings are me mornings, and I'll elaborate on that. One thing that I think I've never done so much of is compared. I'm not that competitive when it comes to competing with other people. I'm competitive as heck with me and the guy from yesterday. You know what I mean? Like me yesterday, like I better be doing better than that guy. Otherwise, it's when I feel like I'm low. I feel like I'm not moving forward. But that's huge to me. Not necessarily competing with other people because I feel like everybody has their lane. Everybody has their track, right? And I don't necessarily want to live in their track. Mm-hmm. Again, when you have a grip on your truth of the path that you want,
Sure.
like you become you competition. So social media like gets me hyped up, like it gets me excited because I see friends killing it, right? I look at social and I see Jamil and Pace and Brent doing amazing stuff, like.
And
awesome.
it doesn't bother you at all.
No,
Yeah.
absolutely no.
I love that.
Like like we collaborate. I collaborate a lot with Brent actually, and like his students and stuff like that. So I mean that's a really good thing. It's just a different lane. It's a different speed, right? They have different gears and different stuff going on. So in that sense, it's really good. What really triggers me is feeling like I lost a day where I didn't move forward with my dreams, with my vision, with the space that I want to be in. Like that will annoy me.
That'll bother you.
Yeah, that'll spark a fire. I wake
It's
up
healthy, I think, though.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, at least at this point, I'm looking for counterbalance in my life, not necessarily balance, just counterbalance, like something to bring me back to center when I'm kind of messing up.
Yep.
And that's huge. And the mornings, or not falling into that space of beating myself up when something goes south. And things are gonna go south.
Sure.
Right before I drove here, I got a lawsuit.
Oh my gosh! Yeah.
From the business, right? And it happens. Like it's kind of if you're reaching out to enough people,
It's going to happen.
It's gonna happen, right? So you'll get punched in the throat.
Yep.
I mean, I can choose to be all beat up and
Austin, I can't make it,
scared and freak out about that kind of stuff, or say, oh look, shit. I mean, it's just another part of the gig. You know what I mean? In the sense of not letting stuff get to me, my mornings are me. I really start working. I mean, I start working. Well, my first huddle is at 8:15 with my team, right? But I usually wake up at 5 in the morning. I go to the gym with my son, and he's 16 years old, so he's ripped and beef and beefed up and like all strong and stuff. So I got to keep up with him. That's that nourishes my soul. And it's one of my favorite things to do throughout the day. So it sets me up. Like it really puts me in a good mood. Just the fact that I can still keep up with my son who's 16 years old, puts me in a good mood, right?
Uh-huh.
Then I come back home. I have a time block of about 30 minutes, where he gets, he changes and does breakfast and all that stuff. And then I drop him off at the bus stop because it's a couple of blocks from the house. I live in a gated community. So those 20 minutes, I go into my study, my office, and I'll meditate. Like I just sit there with myself, and I don't turn anything on. I don't check emails. I'm kind of winding down from the gym at that point. And I start, my body's just kind of settling in and that sort of thing. So I sit there and I meditate, and I practice gratitude. There's a couple of things that I hit on a regular basis. I think about, great stuff that happened, great stuff that's going to happen. I think about great relationships, conversations, and stuff like that, that puts a smile on my face. This podcast is going to be one of those things in the morning.
I love that, yeah.
So it's just, it's intentionally, putting good stuff in my radar because it's easy, like you said, to forget to be grateful. It's super easy.
Yeah.
Super easy to forget to be grateful. That happens. I go drop them off. I come back. I have a little bit more time myself. Then I start kind of mapping out the day and whatnot. And then I drop off my 11-year-old son at school. So I spend time with my wife and my kids in the morning. And then by around 8 a.m., like I'm done with all that stuff. And then jumping into the huddles and that sort of thing. So it's funny thing is that, whenever this usually happens during like summer, because we don't wake up early. I don't have the kids to go drop off, and that's when I start dropping the ball in meditation and start dropping the ball on the the routine type of stuff. In my days, bro, like I'll wake up at 7:30 and I'm lost, I'm scrambling.
Dude.
Like it just puts me in a whole different thing. So the lesson to self is like just wake up early.
Yeah, and you just got to get right back on the horse when you have the bad day, right?
Yeah.
Like, man, I've been guilty of that in the past. I'll go 6 months or however long, and I'll have a routine and I'm dialed in, and then you friggin' fall off, man. You get sick or you get injured or you just you drink one too many beers or whatever, right?
Oh yeah.
And I mean, you just friggin' plummet. I mean, like, and then and if you're not really careful, dude, then that becomes a habit, right?
Yeah.
And all of a sudden 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 days go by, you didn't go to the gym at all for a week. And, man, I think the key to life from what I'm learning is just if you fall off, just get right back on the horse.
Yeah.
And don't beat yourself up too much. I think that I've struggled with that in my life, and maybe people can relate watching or listening, where I'm a really hard critic on myself.
Yeah.
Right? So if I mess up or I do anything wrong, like I'll beat myself up, right? And I think there's a happy medium to that too, right? Like to your point, how do you be competitive with yourself and where you were yesterday without being so hard on yourself that it's actually detrimental to your health?
Yeah.
Right? And that's a tough balance too. Have you ever had that problem at all?
Yeah. I mean, you're talking about the overachiever syndrome.
Seriously, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Like, man, did great. And then what happens is that we're not even done, not even take time to celebrate one win when we're already thinking about the next one, right? And it becomes this. Yeah, it's like, all right, cool, moving on.
Mm-hmm. Dude, I was listening to a podcast, not to interrupt you. I was listening to a podcast with Ed Milet and Lewis House. And like, they're even saying like, the other people around you are celebrating, right?
Yeah.
Like you just achieved some big victory, right? Which is I never heard it the way you put it, the overachieving syndrome, right? So you achieved this big victory, right? Your girlfriend, your wife, your partners, your employees, whatever, everybody's celebrating around you.
Yeah.
And you almost get mad at them for celebrating.
Yeah.
You're like, why are you celebrating? Like and you're almost mad because you're over it already, right? You're like, dude, we got to freaking get back. We got to start working right now
on the next one.
On the next one, right?
Yeah.
It's tough. How do you not do that?
I get there's certain things that I do that pull me away. When I mention counterbalance, that's what I mean by that. So I'm very much that dude. I'll work 14-hour days, 15-hour days, and if I'm like doing my thing, if I'm in my space, I'll forget to eat. That kind of I can get that kind of obsessed about something. If especially if I'm building something or you name it. If it's something that's really in alignment with my passion, what I do, and my everything that we talked about, like it's easy for me to do that kind of stuff.
Yep.
I gotta find stuff that pulls me away and that just distracts me more than what I'm actually doing. And that to me, I mean, gym of course is one of them. If I don't go to the gym, I feel moody. I feel like I'm like, I mean, I don't know.
You gotta go to the gym.
Yeah, I mean, I turn into this person that's not cool.
No way.
No way. Gains, mental gains. Another thing is music.
Yeah.
For me, like I'll if I grab a guitar, dude, I'll go on a mental trip and I can do that for a couple of hours and just refresh.
Wow.
Right. So there's things that that I know will, set me up for enjoyment. Like they put a smile on my face.
Yep.
And I think joy is one of the most underrated things, man. Think about it. We often look for passion, purpose, and like the big ticket items, right? In terms of the life that we want to live, and my truth, for example, which like those things they can sound heavy. They like it takes a minute to know yourself to even know what those things are gonna have a resemblance of, right? Not necessarily have them dialed in, because I think we're always evolving, and like those evolve along with us. But we have this one thing that's easy to peg, and that's joy. Is what you're doing putting a smile on your face? Are you feeling joyful? I'm joyful.
Yeah.
I'm feeling joyful. Right.
Same.
This conversation is joyful.
Yep.
You know what I mean? The space. I walked into your office. Love the place. Love the vibe. It's a joyful environment, right? And I think those are guidelines of how we're doing throughout the day. Are you walking in the path that you're intended to walk, intentionally, trying to reach, right? If I wasn't, or if it wasn't in alignment with that kind of stuff, it would not feel joyful,
Right?
It's such a simple lighthouse to follow, and every single day we forget about that.
Yep.
And I mean, I'm not afraid of throwing anybody under the bus in this one, because I think we all do it.
We do.
Right? It's simple to forget about the things that bring us joy, and it's the biggest, most clear, sign that you're doing the right thing, or you're in the right path. If you go into your work in the morning and you have a smile on your face, are you feeling joyful? Yeah, I'm assuming so, right?
Yep.
Means that you like the environment, you like the people. If 90% of your day was joy, bro, you're winning.
Right.
You know what I mean?
And it's not that everything has to be perfect, right?
Yeah,
it's just that it has to not suck.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
You know what I mean? Like,
that's
all the time, right?
Yeah.
Like, you just have to have, like, look, our operation's not perfect, right?
Yeah.
Deals go sideways. We have all the same problems that anybody else has. But we have an incredible culture with incredible people. And so 98% of the time, we've got a ton of joy, and we're having a ton of fun, right? And we're having a blast.
Yeah.
And 2% of the time, things suck.
Yeah.
And everything, and I hate my life, right? For 2%, right? Like,
2%, you want to kick yourself in the
right, 2%. I'm like, gosh, dang it. You know what I mean? Like, what the heck, man?
Yeah.
Like, I can't believe that happened, right? Or I can't believe, that we lost that deal, or I can't believe that I didn't think about that, or I can't believe whatever, right? But you learn from it and you move on. As long as that isn't flip-flopped.
Right.
Where you're enjoying it 2% of the time, and you hate your life 98% of the time, right? You just got to make sure that, because a lot of people are they're in a situation like that, where they hate everything about what they do.
Isn't that incredible, man? I mean, that's just insane.
Yeah.
Right.
I can't wrap my brain around it.
To not take the time to ask yourself, what do you want out of life? What your truth is, and what brings you joy. Like, it's three very simple things that we can go back.
Really quick, if you're a real estate agent in the state of Arizona and you're looking to join a phenomenal team, then I would love to have a conversation with you. If you're looking for an incredible culture, you're looking for lead generation, you're looking for transaction coordination, then I would love to have a conversation and see if you would be a great fit for our team, okay? So again, if you're an agent in the state of Arizona, make sure you text the number 480-418-5339, the word agent, okay? Again, 480-418-5339, the word agent. Now let's go ahead and get back to the show.
And look at and just do a self-assessment. Like, okay, how's the quality of life that I'm living?
Yeah.
Right. Most of your audience, I'm assuming, is going to be entrepreneurship, driven. So it's important to keep that kind of stuff in mind. And I don't care what level you are. If you talk to Mylette, and if you talk to, I'm maybe at a mastermind this weekend in Tampa, and I mean, big players. They have the same problems. There are people doing a lot more than what I'm doing, what we're doing, and they have the same issues. Like, they have the same stuff. They look for the same levels of joy. And at the end of the day, like, there's certain things that are gonna give us that joy at an individual level, right? That's when you were asking me about, when do you do a flip, when do you wholesale, like, to me, it's a lifestyle thing.
Yeah.
Like, is that going to be a pain in the ass flip that I don't want? I mean, proceeds are good, but I'm gonna be sucking for 3 months. Like,
Right. Yeah. You don't have to do that anymore.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that's just a beautiful thing. You've gotten to a point where you can make that decision. Hey, I don't want, that does not align with the life that I said that I wanted to live, right? So I'm going to pass on that opportunity, or I'm going to give it to somebody else. I'm going to partner with them. I'm going to give away 50% of the profit because I don't want to friggin' deal with it, right? And I think it's just a beautiful place to be in, right? And I have opportunity that comes my way all the time that I turn down. I'm not perfect. I'm still getting better at it, but my goal is to turn down more opportunity. Right? Like, it's actually a big goal of mine. I want to get better at saying no.
It's huge.
Right?
Yeah.
Because I'm a yes man at the end of the day. Like,
talk about flipping the coin.
Right, dude. Man, I want to get to a point where I'm like, no, I don't want to do that. Or no, I don't want to go there. No, I don't want to do that trip. No, I don't want to do that speaking engagement. No, I don't want to, because I think you have to be very careful that you don't overcommit and then end up hating everything, right?
Yeah,
and not having any joy.
100%.
Couple kind of questions in conclusion. It's crazy, dude. I feel like we could go a couple hours, like 2-3 hours.
It's easy to talk.
It's already
to you,
been
man,
like an hour and a half. I could go forever, man. Yeah. I ask everybody this towards the end of the interview because I'm just so curious. There's a couple questions that I kind of want to know. Number one, I think right now, and I made a video about this the other day, I think there's a lot of people who are like, wholesaling's dead, or like, you got to do, the only way to win right now is doing novations and seller finance and subject to and all that, right? And I'm not against any of that, by the way. In your opinion, can you still wholesale in 2023?
Yes. How do you think, all these novation deals and creative financing deals happen? You got to find the seller first. Wholesaling is all about finding the sellers first. Of course you can.
Yep.
It's crazy to think that you can't wholesale.
Why do people like when there's negative news or the media is talking about whatever the heck they're talking about, right? And you've got, CNN, constantly negative news is what that stands for, in case anybody was wondering. And you got all this junk, right?
Yeah.
Like, how do you just put your head down and ignore it? Because I'm with you, bro. Like, we're wholesaling. We didn't even, it dipped down for like a month, maybe.
Yeah.
Like, we maybe took like a month dip, right? But we always do, like, before COVID, during COVID, I think is it after COVID now? Can I say that? Are we still in the middle of it, or are we after?
I think COVID season 4 or season 5.
We're like, it's like, it's COVID. It was like COVID-19 and then COVID 20 and then COVID 21.
Yeah.
We're in like COVID 23 now.
Yeah.
So, like, and we're still wholesaling, right? As much as we've ever wholesaled. And I think the hedge fund era screwed people up in the head.
Yeah.
Like, the era where hedge funds were paying 110 cents on the dollar.
Yeah.
We remember that era, right?
Oh, yeah.
Where I could submit any deal to a hedge fund and they'd overpay for it. Like, I think it screwed people up in the head.
Yeah.
Would you agree with that? Like, where did people get this backwards idea that, like, now they think wholesaling is so hard? It's like, no, you just have to sell it to a freaking flipper at a good deal. It's got to be, the numbers have to work.
So right now, I mean, what's exactly now you have to actually negotiate, do the stuff that we were doing back in 2013. Yeah, like that's the kind of stuff that needs to happen again. But no, I think if anybody got into who got into wholesaling after 2018, I think saw it's been a weird time. I mean, you have valleys and peaks, and then incredible peaks, and then super dry. It's insane. But I think it's talk to those people who've been wholesaling for 10 years, right? Like, is it still viable? Of course it is.
Yeah.
Right? Because they're used to negotiating. They're used to actually coming in and then doing the work. What happens? All the buyers went away. Not necessarily. They're still buying, right? You just have to go about it, and you actually have to market to buyers. So what do? You pivot your strategy, right? It's the first thing that we did. So there's things that happen as the market shifts. That you have to pivot in your business, and I think that's what a lot of people are not doing. They're used to, like, just throwing something out on the out there on the MLS, and then having people just fight for it. But it's not the case anymore.
Yeah.
So what happens? Like, you have to tweak it a little bit. You have to put a little bit more effort. I mean, we took some of the strategies that we have in lead generation and brought them over to the dispo side. RVM campaigns, for example. I mean, what I was talking about earlier. on the dispo side to move deals. And it's just, we do another one that's 5 mile radius. Every time we get a property, we'll pull a 5 mile radius of the cash buyers the last 12 months. And then we'll do an RVM campaign after that. First thing that we do, we skip trace it, RVM campaign, and then, hit it, right? So there's things that you have to be proactive in doing so you don't get bogged down with the times. But I don't know. I think we got spoiled over the last 5 years when it comes to wholesaling. But if you do the research, man, and I think people freak out. If you're just looking at social, you're looking at CNN, you're looking at what other people are posting and doing, what other people are selling, it's going to be easy for you to get, the shiny object syndrome.
Yeah.
Like, oh shit, like, okay, now I got to do innovations. Now I got to do, this, I got to do that. You can do all kinds of stuff within the same, business model. They become bolt-on processes to your wholesaling operation. I mean, you know that better than
and it goes back to what you said an hour ago, which was serve other people.
Yeah.
Right. And we do the same thing at One Roof, right? Which is the name of our main real estate company. And that name, all it was, hey, we do multiple different things under one roof. Yeah. Right. And so when you're talking to a seller, it's like, hey, what would make the most sense for you?
Yeah.
Right. It's like, where instead of cramming one option down their throat,
right.
it's like, hey, we have 3 or 4 different ways that we can help you.
Yeah.
Right. And then it feels like, go back to the psychology thing, it feels like less of a sale. Yeah. Right. Because we're just, hey, I'm just here to help you.
I mean, you're genuinely problem solving at that point. That's what you're doing. You become a one-stop guy, person or company for that seller.
And those are just bolt-on things, like you said. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we do creative financing stuff. Sure. But it's all, so we have different ways that we go about monetizing on the leads. I mean, we'll do retail even, right, as it's plugged into the process. But our first go-to is always going to be wholesale. Honestly, I think why people gravitate to all the other, shiny object, stuff out there, the other strategies, the conversations are easier. The conversations are easier. You're closer to that retail price point. One of the things that freaks people out every single time is the fact that we have to get a property at 70% of market value or below, right? Like how? And then there's such a big mental block to having a conversation about that particular thing that freaks people out.
Which I can't wrap my brain around.
Dude, it's incredible how afraid people are having conversations with somebody else, picking up the phone and having a conversation.
Rafael, isn't that just the number?
It is.
Like, think about it for a minute, right? Like, if the ARV is $500,000.
Yeah.
But the property needs $100,000 to get it to be worth $500,000.
Yeah.
And the only and if the seller doesn't have the money to do that, then somebody else has got to do it, aka an investor, right? And the only way an investor is going to do it is if they're not a nonprofit.
Yeah.
They want to make money, right? So, okay, if it's going to cost $100,000 to get it to be worth $500,000, and I've got holding costs, and I've got repair costs, and I've got realtor costs, and I've got all that crap, and I want to make a profit, then my 300 number or whatever number it is that I reverse engineer and I land on, that's just the number.
Exactly.
Like, it's not, people get so in their own head of like, oh, 60, 70%, 50% ARV. It's like, stop thinking like that. This is just the number that anybody's going to buy the deal at.
Exactly. I mean, it's what
it's worth.
Makes, and I think that one of the things that at least I had it as a stigma, right? Coming into deals at first was like, how is somebody going to take that offer so low? I thought it was a money problem. People selling wholesale, it's not necessarily always a money problem.
Yeah.
I mean, there is a money principle, of course, right? But they have, they have time issues. They need to be relocated. They're squatting. There's people squatting in the house, and they just, they can't help it anymore. Like they don't know how to have the conversation and kick their, cousin out who's been living there for free for 3 years.
Yeah.
That's where we come in. Right? They become accidental landlords. The house is a dump. It used to be a hoarder house. Now it just, they got probate, process, and it's theirs now. There's so many things that play into that kind of stuff, right? And if we go in just with the dollar, version of that problem, like 90% of the time we're going to be wrong.
Yeah,
there's something.
For sure.
But I think, like, honestly, genuinely, I think that's one of the biggest reasons why people will just push back on wholesaling. Because it's really one of those trenches things.
Yeah. Like
you're actually out there, you're in the trenches, you're having conversations. These conversations can get, intense.
Yeah.
And they can feel like they're too difficult to have, and I don't know, people will move to comfort.
Yeah.
1,000 times before they move to, pain.
I think you just got to keep it simple though, right? Like I think for people watching, if I buy a 2015 Mercedes Benz,
Right.
the ARV of my Mercedes Benz is not a 2023 Mercedes Benz. It's a 2015.
Right.
Right? Like if I go to the dealership to trade that car in, they're not going to give me what the 2023 Mercedes Benz is going for.
Right.
Because mine has miles on it now and it's outdated, right? And it's got wear and tear and it needs new tires and it needs a new freaking steering wheel, right? And so they're going to offer me 60% of ARV. Right. Like, you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I'm not mad about that because I just understand that. Right.
Yeah.
And I think somewhere along the way in the real estate game, people overcomplicated it.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I think it gets emotional a lot of times. It becomes an emotional conversation when it's really a logical approach to the numbers. I have a sequence that, for example, that I go through, right? Like to get to a logical explanation of why my number is that. But really all I'm doing is I'm reverse engineering the number. And you know what? One thing that's very interesting that I did, we got for a period there, we had one of our acquisitions jump out, and then we got bottlenecked with a ton of leads. I don't know if I mentioned this to you before or not. We got bottlenecked with a ton of leads, and I had to move quick, right? I had to scramble. And you're talking like you gotta handle these leads this week. So I took one of my VAs and plugged them into acquisitions. And I took I think it was like 2 days and a half or something where I got him doing just really, hone in on the wholesale offer, wholesale offer. This guy's in the Philippines. It's like, this is what's gonna happen. You're still gonna get your salary for every deal that you close. You're gonna get $1,000. He's like, what? And so I plugged them in just out of need. We just needed to clear out the pipeline from the leads because we had a bunch of leads.
Sure.
And he starts dropping the low anchor number. The low, like, this is a number where you have to start off.
Yeah.
With. There's no emotional attachment.
Right.
To him, it may be might as well be $1 bazillion.
He doesn't even know any better.
Yeah. No, there's no like, okay, cool. That I'm like, he doesn't, you know what I mean? There's no, like, the monetary system is different. The way they live is different. So throwing a number is just that. So there was no emotional attachment to that number.
Yeah.
And if you listen to the recordings, like, you know how when we drop a number and we drop the offer,
our tonality
is like
we're all freaking holding our breath, and
we make it sound like this brutal thing.
Yeah.
He's like, okay, yeah, we can do $70,000 on that house. And then he would just stay quiet, right? And then it would just be kind of taken as that. I was like, oh, okay, yeah, 70,000. I think we're a little off, maybe, And he's got, he got deals. This is not too long ago. I'm talking maybe 4 months when I plugged him in. So deals come in after that, and like the guy is super happy.
Yeah.
But it really kind of became one of those things. Like, I plugged him in as a need. Like, now he's there. Like, he's one of the acquisition reps. Like, I'm seriously contemplating just moving the entire thing to BA.
That's the right. That's the concept of like the in that scenario, the less you know, the better.
Yeah.
Like the more naive that you are.
Yeah.
I always used to say in business, like the more naive a guy is, like when I was, even to this day, there's times where I'm naive, right? Like I just don't know any better.
Yeah.
And sometimes me not knowing any better allows me to take massive action.
Yeah.
Right? Like I'll get
You're
into
not overthinking it.
Yeah, because I don't overthink anything. If I were to get into a new business or a new venture, or a new thing, and I were to call everybody in that thing, and I were to start asking them a bunch of questions, I'd probably eventually talk myself out of it, right? Yeah. But like I'm the kind of guy where I'm like a fire ready aim kind of guy, right?
Yeah.
So I just dive in. And it's almost a very naive, and I don't know if this is a word, but the very naiveness that allows me to just freaking like you're talking about, like
no holdbacks.
No holdback. Just make the offer.
Make the offer.
Don't be weird about it.
Yeah.
I love that. Dude.
Yeah, it's absolutely, bro, 100%. And I think ignorance is bliss in certain things, right? But yeah, like this guy, he started crushing it right out of the gate. And again, like the only thing I'm training in, you asked me earlier if I was still going on appointments. I'm not going on physical appointments, but for example, if they see something that's more complicated, like a creative financing deal, we have stuff in there and all that, it's built in clauses and that kind of stuff. But whenever something like that kicks in, like if it's outside of wholesale, like he'll just tee it up, right? And then I'll put eyes on it just because I like it. Or commercial property deals, I'll put eyes on all of those and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, like it's there's no emotion behind that low anchor. It's like, this is better than when I started. You know what I
sure,
mean?
dude, I love
I was
that.
freaking out.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Because you're doing the math.
Yeah.
Right?
I was Brandon Simmons. We're talking the other day, one of his mastermind meetups, and him and I were at the first appointment because we used to work together. Like back in the day, we were at the first appointment where I dropped the low anchor, and I dropped the number, man, and the seller just pushed back from the table. And I've forgotten all about it. He was talking about it the other day, but yeah, it's like I don't know, like if it doesn't make you clinch, like,
Right.
yeah, you gotta, and it's not that it's gonna be that number, necessarily, but it draws a line on the ground for negotiation.
I love that. Yeah.
So.
I love it, dude.
Yeah.
Well, my last question for you is, nobody's got a crystal ball, but what do you think about the real estate market? And where do you see it going? What do you think about 2024 and beyond? What should people be doing right now? Should they be doing anything? Should you buy investment properties? Should they wait? Like, what should people be doing right now? And how should they prep for the future? And what do you think will happen in the market?
Don't do anything. Let me buy all the deals. No, I mean, I can speak for what we're doing. I think, times are crazy. Like, who knows what's going to happen? I mean, like, for example, we just saw a bank, that, went, saw a tough time, but that's because they allocated their funds in the tech space, right? So it's not necessarily in the, it ripple effects in a lot of different areas.
Sure, yeah.
But it's a specific industry. So you see that, and then people freak out and they start pulling out of, different verticals. And that's what I mean by ripple effects. So who knows, right? Like, who knows? I don't have, like you said, a crystal ball or anything, but what we're doing, I'm constantly doing research in terms of markets. I'm looking at different, markets and okay, for example, what are the days on market on this, particular area? What are we looking at when it comes to absorption rates? You know what I mean? And that, what's the buyer ratio like in that specific area? What are the listings, or inventory percentages in that area? So there's certain things that I look for when I'm looking at markets, and I just do that because markets perform differently. Like what we're seeing, for example, right now, we just rolled out Indianapolis. What we're seeing, I think we brought in 50, close to 60 leads. My cold calling team is 5 people, so it's not like a huge department. And we have a backlog right now of leads that are coming in from there. And the same process is going on. Interest, soft passes and all that stuff, and then acquisitions, right? So I'm taking that process and just plugging it into different areas. I think that's one thing that we have to do. Because things are going to get tough in certain markets, especially if you're in a big metropolitan area. Like, for example, us, right? Here is competitive, as can be. But it doesn't mean that you can't supplement. It doesn't mean that you can't tap into different vertical or different areas and adopt a few markets. I think that's the play on that stuff. I'm super clear on the fact that I don't want to fix and flip. Yeah. Like, everything that we do outside of my backyard is gonna be either ran by somebody else as a partnership or wholesaled. Yep. Like, it's part of the business model, right? But getting clear on the model that you want. And then don't be lazy. Just do some research. Figure out, ways of doing, that kind of stuff. Like, that's the kind of stuff that we bring on like in the coaching call last week. Yeah. We looked at 4 different markets and pros and cons of each and whatnot. And people are breaking into those, right? Mm-hmm. The same process that we already have, it's systemized. We take that and then plug in a VA for that market, pull a list on that market, and then go to town on it. Sure. I think that's really one of the things that's gonna. Anybody who's gonna make it, per se, over the next 3 to 5 is gonna be doing, some of that stuff and diversifying. I think.
Yeah, and just work ethic, I think, right? Like,
yeah,
you can make money in any market. Don't over leverage yourself. I think a lot of it is just like the common sense principles that you would think everybody would have, which I think a lot of people just have to learn the hard way, and I've had to even learn the hard way at times. Which is just, hey, look, work hard, don't over leverage yourself. Do the right thing. Make sure you've got money put away. Yeah. Make sure you've got your emergency fund and you've got all your stuff kind of dialed in, right? Invest your money, right? Live below your means. There's just different things that you can do, right? That are simple in the grand scheme of things that I think like. And then when these opportunities present themselves and the market does different things, you can invest at the appropriate time and you can make a lot of money.
Right.
Right.
Exactly.
There's fortunes are made in a down market at the end of the day. So, when I look at the market right now, I'm fired up about the market. I love the fact right now, personally, that there's a lot of people getting out of the industry. You know, a lot of real estate agents are getting out of the industry. A lot of wholesalers are getting out of the industry. And I'm fired up about that, dude.
Yeah.
Because it's more for me.
Yeah.
Right? And more for you.
Well, I mean, the opportunity zone just opens up a lot, you know, and it's just, I mean, there's more deals to be had out there. And that's what I was what I was saying about people who've been in the business for 10 years, right? They perform, they act, they think in a very different way than the people who have been in the business, you know, post 2018, 2019. All right, cool. This is just another, it's another glitch in the system. We'll go through it.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're almost better off if you got in a long time ago, you know? I mean, anybody who got in post 2018, man, hopefully you're watching and you're just like, stick with it.
Yeah.
Stay in the game. Ride it out.
Bob and weave.
Yep. Just be nimble, you know, move around. Change some stuff, you know.
Yeah.
Man, I've talked to a lot of people who like built their whole business around selling to hedge funds or whatever. And I'm just like, dude, you got to adjust. You should have never built your whole business around that to begin with.
Yeah.
You should have always had other buyers. You should have had.
I think I see that as a bolt-on opportunity. Mm-hmm. You do it, you know, on top of what you got to have a strong foundation of stuff that works. That's evergreen kind of stuff, right? I did the mistake of putting a lot of, we dialed back cold calling. This was early on last year. We dialed back on the cold calling, and then we went super heavy on SMS and a couple of different things. SMS tanked. That's when red flags and all kinds, you know, the carrier started blocking everybody and their mom. So our lead count dried out like completely, right? And I had one cold caller. Like, that was my lead manager. I was like, okay.
Yeah.
Let's go back to the drawing board of
Yeah.
that and then build it back up. So we actually brought the same cold callers in that we had, you know, like I think about a month and a half before. Reach out to them, like, yes.
Hey.
They're like, hey, never mind.
We'll give you a raise if you come back.
Never mind. No, and it actually kind of panned out because they did come in and I mean they took it. They started building up like their own like the cold calling hub, right?
Yeah.
So just the fact that we were able to get all of them back was a really big thing. But yeah, so we got hit right on the lead gen side because I leaned too much into that kind of stuff. Going back to evergreen strategies, I mean, cold calling, you do it right, be compliant, you know, as much as you can, and look at you know, FTC regulation and all that stuff, right? SMS, same deal, same stuff. Right now, for example, one of the things that I know it's always going to be a pillar for us is going to be the cold calling approach.
Yep.
You know,
I love cold calling. Yeah. I always used to say, man, like everybody's doing all this other these types of marketing, right? People do direct mail, people do PPC, people text people, and I'm like, where do you end up? You end up on the gosh dang phone.
Yeah.
So why not just start there? Right? Like I always used to kind of, I don't know. I'm with you on the cold calling. I love cold calling, right?
Yeah.
And we've done a lot of cold calling in our career. You know, we used to have 32 full-time cold callers.
Wow.
At any given time, and just internally, like for our internal operation, right? And let me tell you, we dialed a lot of freaking people every day, you know? And we don't have that many anymore, but I love cold calling, man. Yeah.
No, I mean, I think it's one of those strategies, right? It stands the test of time, you know, over and over again. So.
I agree. Rafael, where can people find you, bro?
First off, thank you for having me, man. It's great conversation. I love being here. And I'm pretty active on social media, so if you want to find me, you can do so at Rafael Cortez CEO. That's an IG. Facebook is the same thing.
Cool.
So I'm pretty active.
What about if they want to get coaching from you or anything like that? How do they?
I have free resources on wholesaling at reiwholesaling.com.
Cool.
Yeah.
I love it, dude.
Also can download some free stuff there. I mean, I have a blueprint of you know, right now I talked about like the first 3 portions of it, of the overall process, but I have an entire blueprint on there on how the entire process looks like, so they can download that.
I love that. Dude, you're the man, bro. I
Thanks
appreciate
so much,
you
man.
being on. Yeah.
Thank
and
you.
I'll make sure I
Fun
link
talk.
all of your social media and everything down below, and we'll have to do it again sometime.
Heck yeah, I'm game.
We'll follow up in like 6 months, and I'll come on yours again. You come on mine again. Yeah. I love it, man.
Done and done.
Well, I appreciate you. Yep.
Same here, brother.
Hey, if you're still watching the show, do me a massive favor. If you're on YouTube, drop a comment down below. Subscribe if you have not already. Smash that like button. And if you're listening on any platform, I would greatly appreciate if you would leave a 5-star review. Thank you so much, and we'll see you in the next one.